Hello and welcome to another episode of Work 2.0, the podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Wells, and once again, this is Work 2.0 on the road at SXSW London. Like I said with the last episode with Ryan Serhant, not able to actually physically make it on the road as much as I wanted to due to an injury. However, today, sitting across from me is a guest that you've most likely heard of. He is the co founder of NP Digital. He has been listed by Forbes as one of the top 10 marketers in the world. He's a New York Times bestselling author, and President Barack Obama listed him as one of the top 100 entrepreneurs under the age of 30. And also, the United Nations named him as one of the top 100 entrepreneurs under the age of 35. By now, you probably know who I'm talking about. He is Neil Patel. Welcome, Neil, to the show.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So today you are at SXSW London or South by Southwest, talking all things life after the website. Now, this is very intriguing to me because, as you know, I run a media business. I just recently left Forbes as a senior contributor, and we saw the shockwaves in the industry for journalism within media, and marketing, where AI search has completely tanked revenue that would come from traditional SEO and Google algorithms and all that. And the journalism industry definitely felt it big time. I experienced the shock myself and I've had to pivot and adapt. So I'm really keen to hear from you, your take on this. You were talking today, like I said, about life after the website. Um, Obviously, for years since Google came out, we've had Google
Yeah.
search primarily, and that's the traditional principles of search engine optimization determine who gets visible, who gets seen online, what businesses get to grow. Now we have AI driven search, right? With LLMs, Perplexity, ChatGPT search, even AI native in Google, which decides who gets surfaced and summarized and trusted. So, with that change happening, I want to know from you who gains power and who loses power in this new economy of search.
Yeah. So when you think about this new economy and search, um, I don't really look at it as a power, right? And I don't worry too much about who gains it and who loses it. And this for a few reasons. So back in the day, if you go back like 15, 20 years ago, I think most people would agree, and you may agree, ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, all these companies wouldn't be as big because they probably would have got gobbled up much sooner. But
Yeah,
in today's world, because of EU regulations and regulations in the Americas, you typically aren't seeing these companies being bought up by each other. But what's funny is they're still owned largely by some of the bigger organizations because they've raised so much money. The money's going to come from the Microsofts, the Googles, the
yeah.
Amazons, Nvidias, Metas, etc. Because it's just too much capital, right?
Hmm.
But the way I see it is, as long as you can still generate revenue, it doesn't really matter. And I don't really see one dominant player. Are we becoming more reliant on platforms? Yes, but it's not one platform that we're relying on, because if you go back 5 years ago, we were mainly relying as marketers and business owners on Google and
Yeah.
Meta, right? Because Meta has Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, but those are the main two that we we're really relying on. Now you're relying on Google and Meta, and you're still relying on ChatGPT, or you're now relying on ChatGPT. Claude is still not that popular for driving traffic to websites and driving revenue. It's more used on the B2B end,
Yeah.
right? Meta AI has more than 1 billion monthly active users, and you're starting to see just more platforms pop up. None of them have really reached the scale of Google and Meta, but A, time will tell, and B, I think you'll have many, many more players in the space. Just they'll be smaller players, but
Mm.
these smaller players will add up, and maybe over time they garner, more users, and they have a better position in which they're not as small anymore.
Mhm.
The way I see it is, you being in the publishing space, and I got this question asked to me at South by Southwest. They said, "What are people going to do after the website?" And I was just like, well, it depends if you're a publisher or not a publisher. Because I think the publisher model has really changed, or it's being forced to change. and in three ways. You either have to charge for subscriptions for people reading your content to try to make up for some of the revenue. You have to try to sell some of your data to the LLMs. Okay. So then that way you can get the LLMs to drive you traffic or whatnot, or not say traffic, more so revenue. And then
Yeah.
the third way is you can try to sell more types of ads, sponsored posts, advertising,
Mm.
advertorials where you're doing a whole review on a business. Some of that even helps you in the LLMs, although it's sponsored. It sounds like some of the LLMs don't really care. But when I look at that, the publishers are the ones who have to adapt the most, and they are going to have it the hardest. But as a business, I don't know if you agree or disagree with this. Do you really care if someone transacts on your website or they transact on Amazon or Instagram, assuming the profitability is similar? And you can say, oh, Amazon takes 15%. Well, to get someone to come to your website and buy from you, you have to spend money on ads and marketing. So it's not like it's cheaper anyways.
Sure.
Yeah, you're still getting the business. It doesn't matter if it's on platform or off platform. You just want to make sure you're getting the business instead of the competitor.
What's your take on obviously ChatGPT is rolled out ads. Slowly they're rolling out where enterprises can place their ads in ChatGPT. What's your take on that in terms of, would you say that's a very like a good viable option for the future of marketing?
It is. And I forgot the company's name, but there was a company that shared with me ChatGPT ad data. And the reason I'm trying to mention their data and not ours is we've been early in the ChatGPT ad space. So we're restricted on what we are allowed and not allowed to talk about.
I
Uh,
see.
but there was this company, there was this gentleman, I, I, it was like a ad buying company, and it was named after like some Greek uh, mythology character or whatnot. And he was telling me, this was during a podcast interview. He flew to LA, but he was telling me specifically, most ads are running on comparison terms, like I don't know, Colgate toothpaste versus Crest toothpaste, right? A
Right.
comparison like that.
Yeah.
Or like the best toothpaste to whiten my teeth, the best
Mm.
running shoes for flat feet, and the list goes on and on.
Right.
And for both B2B and B2C. And that's where a lot of the ads are showing up, which I agree with and I can see why. But the data he was sharing, and I can't share the data we had, I actually did put a little bit out there on the internet, and then they kindly sent me an email, so I removed it for them.
I see.
Uh, but the data that he was seeing is, ads are showing up and it's converting well, and I wouldn't doubt that.
Okay, cool. That's cool. So with your session today about life after the website, my the thing that I think I'm most concerned about, and a lot of people in the industry will be concerned about, is if there's a life after the website where the website is no longer the main, gravitational pull when it comes to the customer journey. And what is it that becomes the new center of digital authority? Now, I know you mentioned it being distributed. It's no longer, Google and Meta and now different. Will there be a center like, or is it what's your take on that of when it comes to digital authority?
So you're saying what would be like the version of authority, like Google has like domain authority,
Yeah, in that
or
sense, yeah. So basically, in the same sense that a website was seen as that's your center, like that's your platform for digital authority. Well, once that no longer becomes as relevant and people are no longer going to the website, they're going to LLMs. So what becomes the new website, like after the website? What replaces that?
I don't think one thing replaces it. I think it's because, or let's go back to the website. There was a stat I had in my presentation. Around 51% of website traffic is now bots. So it could be bots from algorithms crawling you, agents. Like we're already turning into a world where it's more bots than humans are actually going to websites. And
Wow.
if you look at Google's release during their I/O conference, you can actually share. You're wearing a t-shirt or a blouse, but let's imagine you're wearing a dress, okay? Or you could be wearing a dress. You're sitting down, so I can't fully tell.
Yeah, it's a dress. Yeah.
Okay, so it's a dress. So the dress, if I'm not mistaken, is black in color.
Mm,
Okay, so let's say you want to dress just like that. You can take a picture. I can screenshot this, upload the picture into Google,
mhm,
and then say, I like this dress. I want something similar, but I want it in pink. And it'll go scour the web and show it to you. Or I could upload two pictures, one with your dress, another one of a fabric that is maybe a maroonish color, orangish color, but it's like a unique color.
yeah.
Not simple enough where it has a specific name, but it's just a random color, like a mixture of colors. And I
Mm,
can say, I want this dress, but in this color. Go find me the most similar thing. And Google's agents will go hunt and try to find it for you.
wow.
So
I,
they're already making changes to do some of these kind of things. And the way I see it is you got to do marketing for all the platforms and channels. Um, Agents will have a big impact on what happens and what gets transacted. But what I
mhm,
really see happening across the web and LLMs is they're going to start measuring your brand more.
mhm, mm,
Brands, well-known brands tend to produce less false information. They're more trusted. So
right.
you're gonna start looking for people who are mentioned more, positive sentiment, positive reviews, been around business for a long time, have a lot of brand queries. Like they're gonna start looking at all these kind of things, and I think that's gonna be a really important catalyst on how well or poorly you do in the future.
Yeah, would you say that's like EEAT, right? Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yep.
So, with a lot of professionals still thinking about visibility in old terms, we want to drive more clicks and,
Yeah.
optimize more. With AI and AI agents and bots crawling websites and changing the way, things, websites and entities are discovered, what do you think that founders and executives and marketing professionals, marketing leaders need to be building now so they do not become invisible?
Well, I think first it starts with tracking like the correct metrics. So
Mhm.
clicks and rankings aren't dead, and you should still track them because traditional search still exists. But at the same time, brand visibility on LLMs, brand queries, how often are people searching for your brand compared to competitors? How often you show up, compared to the competitors on some of these channels like ChatGPT, the sentiment analysis, is it more positive? Is it negative for you
Mm,
versus the competitors? And really important revenue, lifetime value of a customer, right? Profitability. Those are all
mhm.
metrics that people need to track. Now, in today's world, assuming you're tracking all the right things, we're finding that people don't really do what they need to. And what I mean by that is they're not doing enough digital PR where they're getting their brand mention out there on the internet. They're still not doing a lot of the basic SEO fundamentals like structured data, schema markup,
Mm,
leveraging FAQs, answering the questions head on, internal linking. So it makes it easier for these bots to crawl your website and figure out where the content is. Or even keep your content up to date because if you look at it, they don't like citing old content. They try to cite fresh content. So when you think about all these things is people just need to do a lot of the basics.
sorry, can you just repeat the last bit because it cut out for a second there? I'll edit the video, don't worry.
Yeah, no worries. So when you think about, website, you still need to do SEO and basics like
Mm,
use structured data, use headings, schema markup, put in the right keywords where they belong, focus on topics, updating your content, keeping it fresh because these LMs want to cite fresh stuff versus old outdated information. But
mm,
assuming you do a lot of that stuff, and you're pushing hard on the LLM marketing and digital PR and getting your brand mentioned more, you'll be better off. But what we find is companies A don't track the right metrics, and B they look at it before they even start they asking questions like what is my ROI? For newer channels, it's hard to answer that until you go and you start experimenting and you test. And either you're going to have the ROI or you're not, or your
mm,
competitors are going to have the ROI or they're not. So the
mm.
question is who wants to be the first mover? Because there's, a lot of advantage for being the early mover.
For sure, for sure. And you mentioned, just going back to what you said about metrics tracking. Do you know, or do you have any proprietary tools where people can check
Mhm.
if they're mentioned by LLMs, and how sentiment analysis and all of that? What can you talk
Yeah, we do it with Uber Suggest. We do it for free.
about? Okay, brilliant. So
Yeah, there's
people can,
paid
how does it
plans too,
work?
but you can go to ubersuggest.com, put in your URL, create a project, and it'll start tracking everything and your competitors and your sentiment.
Oh, fantastic. That's good to know. So, when AI can generate content at scale, obviously we have AI slop, where some people just take the lazy route and they will say, hey, create this blog post, create this article, and then put it out on the internet and hope that that will bring them traffic, right? Um, I want to know from you what separates a brand or a leader, a thought leader, or a person who wants to be cited and trusted and remembered by LLMs and by people from those who just want to add a whole bunch of noise to the internet with AI slop.
So you're saying what should people do to ensure that they're
Yeah, so a lot of people are putting out like AI slop all the time
yeah.
and thinking that will bring them more visibility, which obviously we know it won't. So, what do people need to be doing instead to really build that credibility and trust?
You got to focus on content quality. And the reason they say that is it doesn't mean AI is bad. It doesn't mean AI is um, the best thing ever. I do think the technology is amazing. It's the reality is it's a combination of leveraging AI plus humans, and that's what tends to win. You
Mm-hmm.
know, and that doesn't mean you're going to have slop. It's really how you use the technology. And I'll give you a great example of this, right? So when you're talking about slop, one thing that has a lot of text-based content is emails, okay? And there's a lot of platforms that leverage emails. So there's this company called High Level, okay? And High Level put out a report in February 2026, so a few months ago.
Mm-hmm.
And they were analyzing because with emails you have open rates, you then have click rates, right?
Yeah.
And you know, the click rates, open rates do matter, but most people when they're sending out an email, they tend to have low click rates. So High Level put out stats, okay? And I'll read some of the numbers here.
Okay.
Click rate for Clavio for the month, and this is the data. Uh, Competitor data shown is updated on an annual basis and does not reflect data from this month. So that was a little asterisk in the chart. But Clavio was 1.3% click rate, HubSpot 2.5% click rate, ConvertKit 2.5%, ActiveCampaign 1.2, MailChimp 0.9%. High Level was at 6.36% click-through rate. That's massive. So imagine sending out an email, and when you also look at their open rate was 41.74%. If you're getting all those people to click, which is high, right? If you look at the closest competitor, it's more than double.
Yeah.
They have amazing AI technology. Now, their AI technology can help you with a lot of things, whether it's copy, landing pages. But the big thing here is sending an email is sending an email. This is just my personal opinion. I don't think it's hard to get a good open rate no matter what kind of platforms you use. But what they didn't focus on was the open rate, right? They do have a high open rate, but a lot of people have good open rates. What they realized was if you're sending out emails and people open it, but no one takes action, it doesn't matter, which I totally agree with. You have to get people to take action and click.
For sure.
And if you're talking about a click through rate that's more than double your next closest competitor, and you're leveraging AI and technology to help people craft better emails, that's a
Mm,
great example of using AI to not create slop. Most people use AI to create junk and to just get the job done faster.
right.
And they don't care about quality. What they did, the High Level did, is we're going to help you use AI to save time and create a better output, which shows in the data, right? So just think about it from that perspective. Whether it's content on your website or social media content, there's nothing wrong with using AI. The issue is people don't use AI correctly, and it tends to be a lot of junk.
Yes.
Two options. Either A, people can learn how to use AI, which is very hard. The prompts and everything that people put in, it's different. You can get them trained, they'll improve over time. Or you can just use tools depending on what task you're trying to do. Kind of think of like High Level. I know they do more than emails, but let's say if it was just emails we're talking about, using a tool that has trained the AI to help you perform better as an individual based on mass quantity of data.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what's going to end up happening in the future is there's going to be a lot of slop and junk because people don't know how to use the
Right.
AI in its most efficient manner. You're going to start seeing more companies like High Level that say, okay, we specialize in marketing. Let's do email, social, and the list goes on and on,
Mm.
really well using AI and integrate that technology and train it and make it perform better than if a human was just going directly to a LLM.
Yeah. Right. It's kind of what I'm seeing recently in industries where, as opposed to just mass market, like make when like when you go to the store and instead of not the store, like the pharmacy, instead of picking up a tailor-made or custom like prescription, you're just taking something that's off the shelf, right? And a lot of AI products that we're seeing are a lot of it is just like off the shelf. Like you have ChatGPT, you have it's very general. What I'm seeing recently is specific industries, especially heavily regulated industries, they're taking AI and they're developing highly bespoke, customized, tailored
Yes.
prescriptions, if you will, like solutions direct. When I was at South by Southwest on Monday, the Bird and Bird CEO Christian Bach was talking about using Legora AI, which is legal tech, so AI which is trained by lawyers for the legal industry, which is a whole lot better than a lawyer saying, ChatGPT, help me draft this for a court docket. You know what I mean? So what you're saying is essentially it's a matter of really having people who know how to use AI strategically for their industry, applied AI, not just using it generically, but actually training it, feeding it with the right data based on what they already know, their human judgment, and then applying it strategically so that they can improve their output as opposed to just a bunch of slop. I love that.
Exactly.
So I think my final question for you would be, in light of that, then, what would you say is like the core skill that marketing professionals and leaders in 2026 and for the next 3 to 5 years are going to need to succeed and thrive in this AI era?
The big thing is willing to experiment and test new things. The people who are stuck in their ways, I don't think are just going to do as well.
Right.
And we just don't see that many companies experimenting and trying new things as much as they should. Like this whole notion of this is what works. Well, just because it worked 10 years ago or 5 years ago doesn't mean that's going to work today in this new landscape that's changing so fast.
Exactly, precisely. And what you're saying, again, you kind of echoing what I'm hearing a lot of CEOs and leaders saying that, when I spoke to Coursera CEO a few months ago, he was saying the same thing: agility, adaptability, being open to change, not being stuck in because this has been done this way for X amount of time, this is the way it should be. And what you're saying is we need to be willing to embrace the unknown and being willing to test our assumptions and challenge and not be so risk averse, but open to experimentation, right? Because that's how innovation happens. Well, thank you so much for your time on the show, Neil. And for those of you who are watching it or listening to this podcast, if you have any questions for Neil, do feel free to leave a comment below wherever you've seen it, and I'll be sure to pass it to Neil and his team. Share this episode with a friend or a coworker or your team. Like it and comment and give it a good rating so that we can keep putting this out there to more people. And I will see you next week in next week's episode of Work 2.0, the podcast.